Welcome to Latest News Blaster. If you want daily real celebrity news, subscribe now. Hollywood has always been a place where truth and illusion walk side by side. To the public, it is a world of red carpets, smiling faces, and powerful legacies. But behind the scenes, insiders have long whispered about pressure, silence, and consequences for those who speak too freely. Few stories reflect this darker side more chillingly than the mysterious warnings once given by Jake Reiner, the eldest son of legendary filmmaker Rob Reiner. Jake Reiner was never interested in being famous for his last name. While his father built a towering reputation as a director, actor, and political voice, Jake chose a quieter path. He stayed mostly away from the spotlight, observing more than speaking, listening more than performing. But those who knew him closely say Jake saw Hollywood for what it truly was, not just an industry, according to people from his inner circle, Jake often spoke about how power in Hollywood worked behind closed doors. He believed that influence did not stop at careers, contracts, or money. He believed it extended into personal lives, mental pressure, and, in extreme cases, survival itself. At first, his words sounded philosophical. Later, they began to sound like warning. Years before he vanished from public life, Jake allegedly began making unsettling statements. At a private gathering, far from cameras and reporters, he reportedly said something that made the room go quiet. "If something happens to me suddenly, don't assume it was random." Those present laughed it off, assuming he was being dramatic or cynical. But Jake did not laugh. Friends say Jake had started to feel uneasy about speaking openly. He often warned others to be careful about what they shared, even in private conversations. One longtime friend later claimed that Jake once told him, "There are truths you're allowed to know, and truths you're not allowed to repeat." When asked who decided that, Jake allegedly replied, "The people you never see on screen." What disturbed those close to him most was how specific his fear became over time. Jake didn't just speak about danger in abstract terms. He spoke as if he expected something to happen to him personally. He would say things like, "I won't live long enough to explain everything," or "If I go silent, it won't be by choice." These were not the words of someone seeking attention. Jake avoided attention at all costs. Despite being Rob Reiner's son, Jake did not fully align with the Hollywood establishment. Insiders claim there was a quiet ideological distance between father and son. While Rob Reiner was openly political and deeply embedded in public discourse, Jake questioned the systems that shaped those narratives. He believed that public figures often spoke within invisible boundaries, and that crossing those boundaries came with consequences. Jake once reportedly said, "Fear is the real currency here." According to him, careers were controlled not just through opportunity, but through silence. He believed people complied not because they agreed, but because they were afraid of what would happen if they didn't. To Jake, Hollywood wasn't just an entertainment industry. It was a hierarchy. In the months leading up to his disappearance from public view, Jake's behavior reportedly changed. Friends noticed he became more withdrawn, more cautious, and more guarded. He avoided phone calls, preferred encrypted messaging apps, and was reluctant to meet in public places. Some dismissed this as paranoia. Others now question whether it was instinct. One source claims Jake once sent a message that read, "If anything happens to me, look at what I was trying to say, not how I was made to look." That sentence alone has fueled countless online discussions. Was Jake predicting character assassination? Was he afraid his credibility would be attacked before his story could be heard? Then suddenly, Jake disappeared from public conversation entirely. No interviews, no appearances, no clear explanation. Media coverage was minimal, almost non-existent. For the son of such a high-profile figure, the silence was unusual. And the silence only made his earlier warnings feel more ominous. As time passed, fragments of Jake's past statements resurfaced. People who had once dismissed his words began replaying them with new understanding. His warnings now sounded less like speculation and more like preparation. Jake had often said, "The system doesn't need to destroy you physically. It just needs to erase you." One of Jake's most haunting alleged remarks came during a late-night conversation with a close confidant. He reportedly said, "They don't kill everyone. Sometimes they just make sure no one listens." That idea, social erasure rather than physical disappearance, struck a nerve with those who later reflected on his absence. To this day, there has been no definitive public explanation addressing Jake's warnings or his sudden retreat from visibility. Rob Reiner has largely remained silent on the matter, a silence that some attribute to personal grief, while others see it as evidence of how deeply sensitive the situation may be. The lack of answers has allowed speculation to grow unchecked. Online forums and independent commentators have since labeled Jake Reiner as the man who warned too early. Some believe he knew he was pushing against something far larger than himself. Others argue he was overwhelmed by the weight of his own thoughts. But even skeptics admit one thing: Jake spoke as if he knew his time was limited. Jake once said, "Truth becomes dangerous the moment it starts connecting dots." That sentence continues to circulate, shared by those who believe his story represents something bigger than one individual. To them, Jake is not just a name. He is a symbol of what happens when someone questions the machinery behind the image. Was Jake Reiner predicting his own death, or was he predicting his erasure? The answer remains unclear. What is clear is that his warnings were not random, and his disappearance from the public narrative was not loud. It was quiet, controlled, and complete. In a world obsessed with scandals, it is often silence that speaks the loudest. Jake Reiner's story is disturbing, not because of what we know, but because of what we don't. His last warnings were not dramatic speeches or public accusations. They were calm, measured, and deeply unsettling, as if he had already accepted what was coming. Perhaps the most chilling thing Jake ever said was this: "My words will matter more after I'm gone." At the time, no one understood what he meant. Now, many believe they do. Whether Jake Reiner truly knew he was going to die, or whether he understood something even worse, remains a mystery. But one thing is certain: his final warnings continue to echo, forcing uncomfortable questions about power, silence, and the cost of speaking too honestly in a world built on appearances. And maybe that was his point all along.